Hey guys, what's happening? It's a nice Sunday afternoon in September, and American football hasn't started yet. I make the distinction about American football because I know a lot of you guys from across the pond are familiar with that other brand of football, but hey, we play it the way we play it over here. You guys play it the way you play it over there, and it's all good. It's fun for everybody. And when it starts, I, being the rabid Dallas Cowboys fan that I am, will be glued to the television on Sunday afternoons. But today, I thought I would take a little break from working on one of my mini projects to talk about one of my mini projects. And that is this, the maschinen krieger Falke by Hasegawa that I've been working on. It's very cool, and I originally thought that I would do an unboxing, but then I thought, well, you know what, those are a dime a dozen, everybody does those, and they're great, but I want to do something a little bit different and give you a little bit more content to sink your teeth into. So I decided to do a semi-unboxing. I've already been working with the kit a little bit, so basically what I'm going to do is show you what I've done at a stage where you can still see a lot of the raw plastic, and still, you know, we can still talk about what's in the box and what you get, but also where I can give you a little bit of an idea of you know, how it goes together, you know, the engineering, the fit, the overall quality, and that sort of thing. And then later on, after I've finished it, I'll come back with another video to talk about, you know, the usual, what I did and what I learned. So, without any further yip-yap from me, let's check it out. Okay, let's have a quick look at the instructions. They are pretty simple and pretty straightforward. You get some nice color call-outs here on the front. Although, now, and this may be heresy, I don't know if this is actually allowed in the maschinen krieger community, which is honestly kind of a cult, but you know, the cool kind of cult. I think, you know, you can paint them any way you want to, and in fact that's what I'm doing on my first one. So, you know, the color callouts are there if you want to make it look like it does on the box, but because this is a science fiction kit, you can let your imagination run wild. Okay, so you get a little bit of a sprue map here, which is fine. You know, and again, the instructions are pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to find fault with. You know, they give you some useful clues, you know, like put the pilot in before you glue the airframe together. If there's a particular order that some pieces should go together in, then, you know, then they tell you that. You know, do it 1 and then 2. And they give you the color callouts, which are for the guns paints, is what they're for. Aqueous color and Mr. Color. So, again, if you're going to use the exact colors and you're going to use a different brand, you have to make those conversions yourself. One thing that I kind of dig about these instructions is they've got these interesting little graphics kind of scattered around, and I personally have no idea what they mean. They are, you know, I'm sure some kind of secret maschinen krieger code, but they're kind of cool, and actually they appear on the decal sheet as well, which you'll see in just a minute. So at any rate, you can see that you get, you know, about 13 steps worth of instructions, and it's all pretty simple stuff. Okay, now speaking of said decal sheet, as I bang into the camera as usual. Okay, this is what you get, and these are good decals. You know, the detail on them is excellent. You should be able to see there up close that you've got some really nice printing. Not a lot of carrier film. They look like they're really thin, and just overall good quality decals. And in fact, I've already experienced some of them, as you can see right here, and that's for the instrument panel, which you'll see here in just a second. Okay, and then you've got a color call-out sheet for a couple of different color schemes if you choose to do those. And it's kind of cool, you know, I like this sort of cardboard card that's got the colors on it and all of the different call-outs for the locations of the decals. You know what, overall it's just kind of a really cool and classy kit that has kind of a different flavor from the stuff we're used to. You know, everything from the backstory of it to the packaging. Speaking of the backstory, I've mentioned that before, but I should include it in this video. These things basically started out as the brainchild of a guy who I believe was a model maker and an industrial designer maybe from Japan called Kao Yokoyama, and the dude is just a creative genius. And you know, he created a story that kind of goes along with it about how these vehicles originated, but they don't come from a movie or a book or anything, just straight from his imagination. And they originated as scratch-built kits, or not kits, but as scratch-building projects that he did, and then eventually got turned into kits that you and I can buy. And, you know, it's fun as you go through, you'll be able to recognize some of the parts. You know, there's little bits of tank tracks, and you know, the fuselage is made up of a couple of large chunks of P-38 Lightning airframes, so you can definitely see the lineage there. Okay, so here's a look at some of the plastic. Now this is typical of hasegawa plastic I've found. It is more brittle, harder than a lot of other polystyrene, which is fine. You know, it still works good, but that's just something that you kind of have to get used to. The detail on these parts is good where you have any. There's honestly not a ton of it, and because these parts are so huge, this is a 1/20th scale kit. Because these parts are so huge, there's just not a lot of reason to have really fine detail, but you can get an idea from looking at that particular piece right there of the quality of the molding and the detail, which is really good. And they give you these nice little ejector pin pads on quite a few parts so that you don't have to fight with filling ejector pin marks you know, as you go down the road. This is another one of the sprues. You can see I've clipped most of it away because I've used those parts and already started to get into primer and paint on some of them. All right, here's another sprue that's got some exterior parts on it. And you can see right here what I was talking about. If you're an aircraft aficionado, you should recognize the business end of the engines on a P-38 Lightning. So that's kind of cool, and it's neat to see how he incorporates all this stuff into the overall design of the model. Okay, these are the figures, and you can see these are quite large, which is cool. You know, if you're gonna practice your figure painting, this seems to me like a pretty good way to do it. You've got two figures with it. One is the pilot, the other is a female ground crew, as you can clearly see. And this is where you kind of get an idea of part of the story with these things. There are no clear parts in this kit because this particular vehicle has no windows. The thing is supposed to be 100% fly-by-wire, and you can see the pilot's helmet right here is kind of this full face affair that I guess somehow connects his brain straight into the flight computer. Okay, so what have I got done? Here is where I am so far, and you can see this is a hunk of plastic. I mean, that thing is already right at a foot long, so it's it's going to be a pretty big model by the time you're done, and everything is very solid, very sturdily built and engineered, and definitely you don't have to worry about things being delicate. Okay, you can see that I've already got the cockpit pretty much complete and detailed. I've chosen to go with a glossy white paint scheme on the inside. You can see the instrument panel here, and the decals for that instrument panel are just really nice. They're a little bit of a hassle because they're all separate for each gauge, and you will spend some time chasing them around that instrument panel to get them all in the right spot, but it is what it is. They pretty much have to be that way, so not too much to complain about there. All right, let me see if I can pop this apart. Okay, so you can see that the inside of this is pretty sparse. You've got a couple of pieces that you've got to add to the inside of the upper shell, including this working hinge for the canopy, which is just a sort of a solid turtle shell looking thing that fits right over this part, and that's going to get added later. Now, one of the things that I love about this is that you can pretty much exercise your imagination about how you build it and what sorts of things you might want to add to it, and I've been doing plenty of that. I was shuffling through my parts box the other day, and I found this half of a 1960s Revell drop tank from a P-40 Warhawk, and I thought, you know what, that would look pretty cool on one side of the Falke fuselage. I have no idea what it does, but I do think it looks neat. So there it is. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so here's a better look at the cockpit. I don't have the seat in here yet because even though it's painted, I mean, it's really simple. It's just basically a white plastic shell of a seat without any real detail on it. And you don't get any seat belts or anything, so I have ordered some aftermarket cloth seatbelt harnesses that are intended for a 1/20th scale Formula One car. So I think they'll work pretty well in this, and those should come in next week, and that'll be one of my first tasks to get those in there. I think it's going to look cool. I also created myself an ejector seat handle that you can see right here. Unfortunately, this is probably the only time you're going to get to see it because with the dashboard in place, that's pretty much 100% impossible to see. But hey, it's all good. Now, one thing you'll notice is that I've added some nuts and bolts, or some nuts and washers here. I found out pretty quickly that the thing wanted to be a tail sitter as I was working on it, and so I just decided to go ahead and stack some weight in there to keep things flying straight and level. Okay, the engine. Now the engine is where I've been spending most of my time, and you can see here that it is full of greeblies at this point. It was just impossible to resist that. I mean, it was okay the way it was, but it was pretty sparsely detailed, and just, I wanted something that looked a little bit more like some type of jet engine, and so I've been adding parts to this thing every day for like a week now. Every time I think that maybe I've done enough, I wake up the next day with some new idea and some mad scheme to adapt parts from my stash to represent something, some gadget on the outside of this thing. I mean, at this point, I have a bunch of plumbing from a Tamiya 132nd P51 Mustang. I've got a little gizmo here from a 132nd Revell Piper Super Cub. I have already started to add lead wire. You can see some of my holes I've been trial and error to get them to be in the right spot, and I'm just going to fill those in before I paint. I've added some leftover photo etch bits. I've added some lead wiring here and there to represent, electrical lines. And I got myself a punch and die kit from UMM, which stands for Unique Master Models, so that I could produce a whole bunch of round fasteners or pivot points or whatever you want to call them to go around the outsides of this engine. And I've done a little mini review on that punch and die set, which is a very cool little tool that I definitely am going to get a lot of use out of. But anyway, that's where I'm at after adding. Right now, I think it's just over 100 pieces to this little engine, which I think is more than are in the entire kit as it comes out of the box. Now, from an engineering standpoint, I have found this thing to be really pretty good. Everything goes together really well. The fit on everything has been almost without exception just really good. There's only been two things that I feel like are worth mentioning. One is the seat. I don't know what the deal is, but it doesn't go down in here, what looks to be the way it should at all, not even close. It's got a couple of rails on the bottom of it, and they ride up on top of this center console right here and don't even come close to sitting down into the actual floor right here. So basically what I did on the bottom of the seat is I just basically cut those rails away so that they didn't interfere right there, and the seat sits down the way that looks to me like that it really should, and that was an easy fix. The one that's not going to be such an easy fix, and that I may not even attempt to fix, is the fact that they don't allow you to put the engine in after the two halves of the fuselage are assembled. I mean, you can see that it would be much easier to paint everything if you could do the fuselage and the engine separately. Because obviously, the engine is going to have to be masked off if it's already in there. And that's a little bit disappointing to me, because the engine would go in from the back. It would go straight in if it were not for these little L-shaped mounting brackets right here that hang it on the sides of the fuselage right here. And that's really sturdy. I mean, there's no doubt that's going to be plenty strong, but again, all that they would have to do is give you some bosses on this piece right here, which is a separate piece. So molding direction is not an issue. They wouldn't have had to use a slide for that. But you could have had a couple of mounting bosses right here to mate with a couple of pins on this part of the engine casing, and then you'd be able to just slide the engine from the back right there and plug it straight in as the last step after both sections were completely painted. And the truth is that the more I look at it, the more I think that I may try to accomplish that myself. I mean, you can see that there's a gap between the front of the engine and the firewall right here. But, a little bit of material stacked up will fill that, and I bet that I can get it to where it wouldn't be a big deal to just chop these brackets off and, replace those with some mounting hardware that would allow me to put the engine in at a more convenient time. But overall, that's really my only beef with the thing, and that's not a huge beef, because really it's not that much trouble to mask this off, even once it's glued in place, and probably is certainly not any more trouble than what I'm talking about doing by cutting and scratch building a little bit. So I don't know, we'll see. It just kind of depends on what kind of mood I'm in at the moment that I look at it and decide whether or not I'm going to do it. So there you go. That is a quick overview of the Hasegawa Maschinen Krieger Falke kit. And hopefully you agree with me that this thing is very cool and a lot of fun. I like to just mess around with stuff and let my imagination run wild. And so for me, this thing has been a huge amount of fun already, and I basically am having to tear myself away from it to work on some of the other stuff that I've got stacked up here. So it's probably good that the seat belts have not arrived in the mail yet, because that gives me the perfect reason to take a break. For those of you who are wondering about price, this kit cost me, if I remember right, it was about $55, I think. And some other guys that I asked said that was a pretty good price. I got mine on Amazon. They came direct from Japan, and it took I think 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks for me to get them. So, it wasn't too bad. I mean, I was in a hurry. I wanted them because I was excited about it once I learned about them. But it wasn't too big of a deal to find them and get them over here to the United States. So, if you guys are interested, they're definitely out there, and you can find them. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that this gives you a little bit of a look at something that's a little bit different, and maybe gives you some ideas about how to get out of your comfort zone. All right, guys. If you're still watching, as always, I appreciate it. Take care. Much love.